I'm Resident Colwood for YouTube Joel Saints. Joined by my buddy Don Schmidt, my buddy Susie. We're here to talk Art Wallace and the Shadows on the Wall. You know, I saw that video and sort of where for the web, the show he did, and there was Elizabeth, there was the other Liz. That was really now. Was that before Dark Shadows or after it?
Yeah, that was in 1954. That was 12 years before Dark Shadows.
Damn. So he basically, in some sense, recycled some of those characters and used them here. Interesting. Go ahead. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Then I'll chime in. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I had never heard of it. Dawn had sent me the video a month or so ago, and I watched it, and yeah, it was very interesting, very fascinating, because of the similarities. I mean, even the house itself was very similar to Collinwood. The layout of it from what we saw. Elizabeth, the blue whale, and then the Jason McGuire character, the blackmail, all of that was very Dark Shadows. Of course, you know, there was no vampire or anything, but yeah, it was really really interesting to see, and I was so grateful that Dawn had discovered it and then shared it with me, because I don't think, even with all of the Dark Shadows stuff that I watch, you know, on YouTube, your podcast, and all of the others, I don't think that it would have come my way if Dawn wouldn't have shared it with me. So it was really cool to see, and you know, it had some funny bits to it. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed how, you're right, a lot of this helped Dark Shadows in a lot of ways. This here. But there are some striking differences too. Because though he took the pretext for the blue whale or the house and some of the characters, I think too, because when you take a Victorian Winters,
Yeah,
you know, for Dark Shadows, it's good. I've talked about this before. It's a pro and it's a con that we never got Vicky's lineage. It's a pro because we can debate it all day long, and it's something they could still reveal later on, you know, if Mark V. Perry's series ever gets picked up. But in the context of when I was watching Dark Shadows in the Sci-Fi Channel, or sorry, on the Sci-Fi Channel at the time, I thought to myself as I was watching it then, trying to place myself in the 60s, going, you know, if I didn't get that answer then, I'd probably be a little annoyed. But I understood why. I mean, they got so far away from that by the time. I mean, even really, people say Barnabas. I say Laura. Laura was more, even before really Laura, but Laura was the definitive, they're never really going back towards Vicky's lineage again. That was really your first, your big sign, your first big sign. Where here, you don't have that, but you do have I love the blackmail. It was, look, this was really good. Art Wallace was a genius and knew what the hell he was doing. And I give him a lot of credit. It's why the reason I wanted to do the beginning episodes was to sort of look at, okay, where does Art Wallace stop really in a sort of weird way? And where does everything else begin? And here's my thing to this. I don't think Art Wallace is really where he stops more so is more Laura or Barnabas, even like the Phoenix thing. But My thing of it is, Art Wallace set the blueprint for the ghost. No offense to Dan, Art Wallace, because even in the first episode of DS and episodes throughout, and I've been talking about this with the episodes I've been going through, you always get a character mentioning of ghost, whether it's Liz, whether it's David. Maggie Evans tells Vicky, "Oh, your hair's going to turn." And Vicky says, "Oh, you make it sound like there's chains rattling every corner. Oh, you think that's wrong?" And it's like, you hear that, and wait, basically you have somebody implying the house is haunted. And then even Burke Devlin goes, "Oh, we always heard Collinwood was haunted." Here, you more get the psychology of, I think the blackmail was done a lot better here, and the character's a lot more sinister than even what Jason McGuire is.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jason, and I love Dennis Patrick, and that's part of it too. Dennis Patrick is so goddamn enjoyable to watch. You sort of want to wrap your arms around him and take him to the Blue Whale for a drink. This guy, no, you want to dress up as the Shadow and plug him with a 1911 bullet,
Yeah.
bang, bang in the head. Really, you do. I mean, and I sort of wonder if that's where, I always think the writers drew inspirations from the pulps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a character who tried to blackmail the Shadow. So, he didn't get away with it. but there is this character here. He's not lovable. He's not somebody you want to wrap your arm. He doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he doesn't have charisma, but he doesn't have what the Jason McGuire charisma that came with Dennis Patrick. And you can tell that there's that, and he has a lot more heavier tones with his Liz than what. I'm not saying Jason that. I want to be clear. I'm not accusing Dennis Patrick's Jason McGuire of not having heavy tones. But there are moments too where Liz is, there's the Willie Loomis factor too.
Mm-hmm.
Liz is ready to call the cops on Willie because of Carolyn. Because Willie is very, creepy. He's hitting on the girls. He's making them feel very uncomfortable. And, when Carolyn grabs Roger's revolver, the only person we haven't seen shoot it, one of the people we haven't seen shooting Dark Shadows is Carolyn. Just want to point that out. And probably because she graduated from the Lamont Cranston School of Shooting. So I've heard. But no, I really do think secretly Nancy Barrett's character is probably the best shot, because just like Paul Kersey, she gets close to her intended targets and pulls the trigger. But here, when she grabs the gun and points it, well, I'll blow your head off. That moment shows you how terrified Carolyn is of Willie, not Jason. Jason, at this point, because by that time, to sort of put it in contrast comparison, Carolyn isn't quite aware of how much of a threat Jason really is to her mother. Here, we see where Elizabeth in this story has to solely focus on her Jason. That isn't the case for Dark Shadows. It's just they have to focus on Willie and getting him out the house. And here's the thing. So does Jason in Dark Shadows. Jason has to kick his friend out. And here's the thing, too. He didn't really want him to come up here that quick either. Mm-hmm. But now he has to throw him right back out because of his actions. Like, hey, if I don't kick you out of here, she's going to... Because he goes, oh, you won't call the cops. What does Liz do? She picks up the phone. And that's a thing, too, because Willie Loomis is a key difference maker in Dark Shadows. Not just Dennis Patrick's, the way Dennis Patrick is doing Jason McGuire. There is a difference of how it's being done. So there are two key differences. How Jason is sort of portraying in a lot of ways. He has this charisma, this Irish accent of very charismatic. He's somebody who isn't as cagey as Willie. He's not as violent as Willie. Where Willie Loomis is this violent figure who has no problem pulling the knife, and we see that with John Carlin's character too. Has no, and because you get the sense that Willie Loomis is killed before, and that's danger, especially in a house full of women. And so when Liz says, "Hey, get him out of here," I'll call the I'll call the cops. I'm Samantha. Here you don't have that because there's so. Go ahead, guys. I'll be right back. I gotta go referee.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I rewatched the episode, and
Did you?
I did, and one of the things that this character in the web, it was kind of like Willie and Jason in one.
That's an interesting. I'll have to rewatch it. Yeah.
Because of how he was talking to Elizabeth, he was like, it reminded me of the original Willie Loomis.
Yeah.
How he was like, make me my eggs, and this is how I want them. And he was being bossy and really creepy with that smile, that smirk.
Yeah, that smirk that he had.
Exactly. And he was talking to, and I mean, I might be mistaken, but I think that the dialogue was almost identical to how Willie was talking to Carolyn and Victoria in that scene in the kitchen when he was like, I want my coffee, I want my eggs, this is how I want them.
And I don't, because I don't remember Jason being like that. Right, he wasn't talking to Liz or Care. He wasn't talking to anybody else like that. He was a little more smooth.
Right, exactly. And so I think that in Dark Shadows, they saw Jason as just a creep, kind of like, just what does he have over Elizabeth? But yeah, not dangerous, not, but Willie definitely dangerous and scary.
Yeah. Yeah, there was definitely that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Oh, the other thing that I thought was kind of different too was how in the web, how I forget the name of the character, but the Elizabeth's daughter, how she kind of liked him and thought that that might have been her dad.
Well, if you remember, there was that conversation in the study where they kind of had a similar conversation, Carolyn and Jason, and she was kind of charming him, talking about her father.
Yeah, but at that point, though, I mean, I haven't seen that episode in a while. Refresh my memory. Was she kind of insinuating, like, could you be my father?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, probably not. But she was using him as a conduit to learn more about her father.
Right. And this one, she was telling Joe, which is another character, that had the similarities. Like, oh, I think this is my father, and yeah, I mean, they I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
There's
that's okay. We'll get there.
And also, this Carolyn was so wholesome, and I thought about it, and it's like, well, yeah, because
this is 1954.
Exactly.
This is before. This is right when rock and roll was about to start with Elvis.
Exactly.
So you weren't getting that like rebellion like Blackboard Jungle or any of that kind of stuff happening yet. It was
a young lady would not be dancing that way, at a bar, even if she was with her fiance or whatever.
This is the first Eisenhower administration years. It was just it was television was still pretty early. That was not going to happen. Elvis had not been on Ed Sullivan. It's not happening. So
and that's interesting because I can only imagine when that first episode aired on television to see that must have been pretty new, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we had the Beatles, but we didn't have hippies,
Yeah.
and that must have been very rebellious. I mean, somewhere between hippies and Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh yeah.
So she was definitely rebelling,
Yeah.
which reached its apex with Buzz.
Yeah.
I still think I think I still wanted to see him ride that motorcycle up the stairs, but that set would have collapsed. They were not going to do that.
No, that would have been great.
Yeah, that would have been really good. All right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, Joel. We filled in for you. We got you covered, man.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, Carolyn asked about her father to Jason. And Jason is telling her nice things. Now, whether they're truth or lie is, but I think too, and here's where Jason sort of gets sympathy points. Jason realizes, man, I'm greedy. That Paul Stoddard, he was greedier than me because here's this guy who had this woman, this beautiful brunette, and he's got this beautiful daughter who he's totally missed out on. What a schmuck. So he tells her nice things about her dad, but in reality, though, what Jason is saying isn't false. Yeah, I'm bad. Paul Stoddard was worse. And he was. The flashback that we see later on proves that. That, yeah, for all of Jason's baddities, he's bad. He's a heel. Use my wrestling term. But Paul is a way worse ill. I'm trying to think of how to word this. And I think this is what Dark Shadows really was going. I wonder if this is what Dark Shadows was sort of going for. But it wasn't. See, I don't think Once Upon a Time in West hasn't come out yet. But if you go watch that movie, Henry Fonda plays a character called Frank. And he's working for a railroad man, a railroad tycoon, who wants to see the Pacific Ocean. Before he dies, he wants to see the Pacific or the Atlantic or whatever. I have to go rewatch Once Upon a Time in the West when I'm done here. He wants to see an ocean and he's got tuberculosis to the bones. The businessman is bad. He's a heel. But Frank is a cold-blooded murdering bastard that Fonda plays. The late Henry Fonda plays. My favorite actor. Yes, the man who has the money is evil. He's bad. But he's hired somebody who's a lot more evil than he is. Who will kill, pillage anybody who gets in his way. There's a great line in the movie. He said the guy with the tuberculosis of the bones. He says, "Congratulations. Tell me, did you need to kill? I only told you to scare them." And he's meaning the McBain family. Brett McBain, his eldest daughter, his son, and his youngest son all get murdered by Frank Sandsman. And this is after they're sitting on the train together. Henry Fonda is sitting there, calm as day. People scared better when they're dying. And that's how I sort of see Dark Shadows. I want to be clear, Dark Shadows, Jason and Paul. Here, Jason feels more like Frank. With the 1950s, I want to be clear. Jason more feels like Frank at times. Like it's good. Look, dark characters did exist in the 40s and 50s. Some are just more darker shade and tone than others. And not all characters really reveal themselves of how dark they are right away. Because it's all about, when you're doing a series especially, it's all about the buildup of how dark that person really is sometimes. And I think, too, there is that buildup in Dark Shadows as well with Dennis Patrick's Jason to a degree, before he ultimately gets choked out by our buddy Barnabas. But this Jason McGuire is very dark toned and has no problem. Hey, remember our deal. Remember the secret. How far would he go to keep it? Would he kill Liz? Who would he kill? Good. I'm sorry. I'm going off a tangent.
It's very interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things that, and Dawn, maybe you can help me out with this. One of the things that wasn't really talked about in the web was really the wealth. And with Dark Shadows, the wealth factor was established at the very beginning, but here they made a point to discuss that the house was like in ruins, that it was falling apart, and her daughter and her fiance Joe were worried because mom, doesn't want to leave the house, and it's dangerous. Like, the house could fall apart at any moment.
She didn't want anybody at the house, so it could never get fixed.
She didn't want anybody at the house, right? But she didn't want to move out of the house either. That was out of the question. So what Jules said, what he asked, yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because what is he trying to, how far is he going to go, and what is he going to do? I mean, is there money? What is he after here?
Sorry. Yeah, Don.
No, I'm just listening. No, go ahead.
Well, my thing of it is, I sort of, here would be my question. When you have a house that's in ruin, and the house in ruins, they take that and put it to the old house in Dark Shadows. So we know where the old house is.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
I didn't even think of that, Joel. That's really good.
Like, you know what I mean? Because, well, Dark Shadows is a tale of two houses. You have a mansion that was built to house many people in the old house, the original Collinwood, as we'll call it, which I call bullshit on. Yes, I'm calling bullshit on my favorite show. I'm gonna go to hell as soon as we all hang up here. But because here's my thing. You mean to tell me there wasn't a Collinwood in England or in Europe? Now, with this, to keep it on track, you have the old house, where Joshua, Jeremiah, Barnabas, Sarah, that's I do believe that the web is where they got the old house. All the houses falling apart and that, because once that's the last family, Joshua and Naomi, that literally live in the old house. When Barnabas is chained up, nobody lives in that house for well over 100 years and plus. That now, but by the way, while they're living in that house, the other house is being built, the great house, the house where Jason McGuire is going to say, "Hey, there's a body in the base. Oh, there's a body in the basement. We know it's in the basement, Liz. We know it's in the basement." It's Paul Starter's body. No, it's not. Here, all the house is falling. We have a combination. There's no separation, and that's where really Dark Shadows does separate itself from this to a large degree with certain things. I'll get into the house first. We know the house's stories. There's a tale of two houses. And this is a tale of one that's falling apart. But hey, we have this blackmailer. What's he after? Is he? And again, I haven't seen like the full web. I mean, in the whole series or whatever. I gather that maybe he wants some legitimacy to hide from somebody or something. Maybe the law, maybe somebody's after. Who knows? I don't know. But to sort of separate it further, we get Carolyn and Joe. Carolyn's husband in the web is Joe. In Dark Shadows, when you watch the beginning episodes, Carolyn and Joe start off as, "Oh, Joe, will you marry me?" Literally, they need to take this. There was a song in the 90s where there was a, "Meet me at the altar in your white dress. I just want to get married." That song is Joe Haskell written all over. And it is. And in the beginning of Dark Shadows, we see Joe, "Oh, will you marry me? Will you?" And Carolyn just pulls away. The Dark Shadows is separating itself early on from the web to a degree where we're not going to have Joe and Carolyn together. We're not going to copy the web verbatim. We're just copying enough to create this show to eventually separate it away. Because you have Joe Haskell. What does Joe Haskell end up doing? Oh, he ends up fighting. Yes, he gets in a fist fight with Burke over Carolyn. Once he loses that fist fight, he's on to Maggie. He's dating Maggie. He's engaged to Maggie. He's moved on. Now you have a different love interest for Joe. Carolyn, she's clearly into the supernatural when she marries Jeb Hawks. I mean, if that isn't as far away from the web as humanly possible, you know what I mean? So there are differences when you look at the overall, because Dark Shadows is 1,225 episodes, by God, but there are similarities that they took from the web heavily. And you can see, like I said, I do believe they took the old house. Because when you're making a wealthy family, for example, well, hey, why shouldn't they have two mansions, right? I always go back to the Shadow. When the Shadow recruited Lamont Cranston, he's already disguised himself as Lamont Cranston. He's already using Lamont Cranston's money. He just wants to make it official. So there's that. With this, that's sort of my question to you, Don. What do you feel that the blackmailer in the web is after? I'm sorry, totally.
I think he's just tired and he wants a place to land and he doesn't really have any money, and there's a house and he could have this somehow. I mean, she's got to have some kind of money because she's living on it, and maybe he could fix up the house. Basically, he's marrying into his retirement. That was his plan. And of course, it's not going to be opulent like what Jason's plan was, but he has some kind of money and she's getting some kind of pension, and he's going to get part of that house and blah, blah, blah. I think it's just his plan, his retirement.
Yeah.
Because he took her jewelry. I don't think she has any. Well, she could have a little money. She doesn't have the Collins money, but she has something.
Yeah.
Damn, that's really good. That's a really good thought.
Now, Jewel, I know this is your show, but I wanted to mention something. I wanted to do a shout out to Rich Handley,
Sure.
Whose list, if it wasn't for Rich Handley, and I don't know who he is, but he has this great list out there of everything in the DS franchise. Without him, I wouldn't have known about the web, the house, the episode of the house, and I wouldn't have known about that there was a reprint of Art Wallace's Shadows on the Wall by Pomegranate Press, which is out of print now. Okay, so it's not my show, so I don't want to go too far. But
you're fine.
But so because it's your show, so I was so appreciative. I'm so appreciative of Rich Handley, because I just, And whoever taped that on their phone of the web being shown at the 50th DS convention, which led me, I want to digress too much. So like I PM'd you, Leela Swift was a director on the web, but there were two directors. And that led me to find out that she started off in the secretarial pool in CBS when it was a radio network and worked her way into early television. So this is, and her and Art Wallace were just starting out with this stuff. So that was fascinating. So I got this off of eBay, and probably it's not as much as the original typed thing with the three-hole, the copies with the three-hole punch was $2,000. This was not $2,000, but it wasn't $20 either. So it led me to get this and read it. And if you want to talk about, I read the whole thing, and I could fill in some holes for you if you wanted to go to that, into that part.
Please do. Go ahead.
So, this is the abbreviated version. So let me just go on to some points. So it confirmed my suspicion. This Dark Shadows takes place in Hancock County, because in the first word's background, in Hancock County, not far from Frenchman Bay. So he did that. He talks about it's called Collins House, and that Jeremiah built it. He married Josette. The family didn't like her. She got depressed and she jumped off Widow's Hill. Now, this is really interesting. So Elizabeth was born, Elizabeth Collins was born, and her father didn't think that he and his wife, whose name was Carolyn, his wife's name was Carolyn, were not going to have any more children. But when I think Liz was about approaching 30, no, 20, she's past 20, she had Roger, and she died after childbirth. And her father's name was Joseph, and basically trained trained Elizabeth to take over everything. He died of grief a couple years later, so Liz had to raise Roger and take over everything. And then she married Paul Stoddard. Okay, so let's see. Let me just say this real quick. Yeah, so I told you all that. Burke Devlin's character, Art Wallace, actually points out he was an Edmond Dantes, and he said he was a modern day Heathcliff out of Wuthering Heights. Laura's maiden name was not Stockbridge at this point. It was Robin. And to put a twist on things, the reason why Joe Haskell knew Carolyn really well is because Joe's father died when he was about 14, and his mother had to go back to work, and she was the day housekeeper over at Collinwood.
Wow.
And that's how they knew. But you know what the biggest twist is in this whole thing is that, well, there was a couple things. Roger Collins did die early on because he got so paranoid he was going to kill Vicky, and he went out to Widow's Hill, and he slipped and he fell and he went over the cliff.
Oh shit.
And the other thing that comes out, so the Frank Gardner and his, the Gardners came and were doing their thing. This is the big twist. So this is Art Wallace's vision of it. So Vicky Winters, the whole thing that comes out about Paul Stoddard, and she didn't really kill him. Art Wallace used the name of Walt Cummings instead of Jason McGuire, who was the character's name in the web. And Liz finally co-opted. She said, okay, I'm going to tell you something. You want to know who your parents are? I'm not your mother, but Paul Stoddard had a child out of wedlock, and you are the daughter of Paul Stoddard.
Oh.
Which I thought was really interesting. But the show, basically what we have here is we have this dream that Dan Curtis had of this woman at this platform on a train station, and he had Art Wallace fill in all the holes. But I'm telling you, Victoria was the front and center character, and they were going to bring Paul Stoddard on the show. He talks about this in his sketches for a storyline, but it's all going to be centering around Victoria Winters. It was all going to be about Victoria. So I just wanted to, and if you have any specific questions, Joel, I could try to answer them, but thank you for letting me go there, because this whole thing with Rich Hadley, the web, and then I actually got a copy of Shadows on the Wall. It's right here.
Now, here's the thing, too. In Dark Shadows, at the beginning of the episodes, as I'm going through them, I did point out that Roger, you can see Roger's paranoia. Like,
it's big time.
With Burke and stuff, and how he sort of feels that, and the reason Roger, because you can't really, though Lewis Edmonds plays both characters, you can't compare Roger to the series to Roger from House, because it's a completely different character. I mean, he's
Correct.
all about, he wants people to come to Collinwood and House. Here, he doesn't want outsiders. He doesn't want somebody to come to her son. Really, he just wants to get his son out of the house and into some boarding school far away, because he's so paranoid of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's paranoid of Vicky. He's paranoid that Sam will get
Yes.
drunk and blurt out his secret. I mean, listen, between Sam's paintings and Sam's liquor adventures, that's a hell of a life. But okay, I once went to a VFW one time, true story, and I said, listen, have you ever heard of the character of Sam Evans? He would be a regular here.
Oh, yeah.
But they just looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, never mind. But here, you have Roger being so paranoid that he's paranoid of Vicky. He's paranoid. He's asking for Sam constantly when Sam isn't around. And he's so paranoid of Burke trying to kill him. He's paranoid of everybody.
Yes.
Stabbing him in the back. Not literally taking the knife, but betraying him. And so you could sort of see where Art Wallace was going to kill him off to a degree. Yeah. But I think and correct me if I'm wrong, where a lot of this I feel changes to a degree is where when Constable Jonas Carter has a conversation with Bill Malloy, and he says David's prince was on the ranch. I mean, that's what he tells him. And the look in Bill Malloy's face, and I love Frank Scofield, great actor.
He's really a good actor. Ugh.
Yeah, you can tell how concerned he is. Not for Roger, not for Burke anymore. He's concerned for not just the kid, not for just David in a sense, but for David's soul.
Mm-hmm.
And his agenda now is going to be, I need to get Roger. I don't need to get David away from Roger. I need to get Roger away from fucking David. And when he goes to Burke, basically I think literally Frank Schofield's Bill Malloy would literally make a deal with the devil to get rid of Roger, because he wants to save David's humanity. And I feel that's really the big change, a lot of the big change, because Bill Malloy's death, people, I know they do a good job of selling you it could be Roger.
Mm-hmm.
There is some more paranoia there. But once they take Roger out of the equation, once you go back to the other suspect, Matthew Morgan, who's got some issues, many. I mean, listen, if he assumes any of us are going to even look sideways at Liz, we're going to lose an eye permanently. To me, Roger, a lot of Roger's paranoia gets doubled on Matthew, really. Matthew's paranoia is just so worse. He sort of takes, I'm not saying that the character did this on purpose. I'm saying the writing team did this too. Okay, we already have a bunch of paranoid, because they do have more than one paranoid character. Even to a degree, Liz is paranoid. She's starting the ghost stories after 18 years are starting to get to Liz. Hey, 18 years in one big ass spooky mansion. Yeah, Ghost stories are going to get to you, no matter who you are.
And that's interesting, Joel, because there's no Matthew. And when you said they transferred that parent in Shadows on the Wall, oh, and by the way, Bill Malloy was always in love with Liz.
Yeah.
Art Wallace makes that quite clear, even though he got married and had a happy marriage, his wife died, and then he's still in love with Liz. But you're right, all that paranoia gets transferred over to Matthew. That's a really good observation.
Well, here's I'm gonna have some fun with that one. It's Joan Bennett. Who wouldn't be in love with her? Okay. Have you ever seen Joan Bennett's movies in the 30s and 40s?
She was a knockout. Yeah, she was a real knockout. Yeah,
1000%.
Yeah. And you could imagine that, because Art Wallace describes her as a young woman. And it's like, yeah, I can see how Bill Malloy would have been totally enthralled with Liz.
Listen, if I could ever get my wife on this podcast, which that'll never happen, because here's the thing. When I had my wife watching Dark Shadows, because she watched it one time through, and she's watching Barnabas and Angelique, and Angelique walks into the room, and they're hugging and stuff. She goes, just point blank, and I've talked about this before. She goes, yeah, they fucked. And I'm like, what? She goes, Barnabas and Angelique, they've had sex. I'm like, how can you tell? Body language.
Yeah.
I'm like, the same woman who said, if I were in the 60s and single, I would do Jonathan Fred in a heartbeat. I'm like, that's my wife. But I do think that when you look at Bill Malloy and like with Matthew and Roger is paranoid. Liz is paranoid to a degree. David is definitely paranoid. We could joke about who David's father is too, but you can sort of see some of Roger's paranoia in David. And even David is more paranoid than what Roger is.
He's really scared. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so paranoid, scared that his dad's going to send him away and no one's going to stop it. Then you have Matthew Morgan, who's so paranoid that somebody's going to hurt Liz, that he's ready to kill them if they so much give her a sideways glance or even make the slightest bit of problems with what he feels, not what you or I or Susie feel is a problem, what he feels is a problem. And that could be literally anything. You see Matthew Morgan's paranoia start off when he grabs Vicky by the arm. Like, you could tell he's a violent character. Like, people talk about the whole him yelling and all his violence doesn't come when they're bullshit, my ass. Watch it the way he grabbed. I'm thinking, yeah, that's a violent dude.
Yes, those series of episodes were so tough for me to get through because they were so convincing. I mean, I would love to ask Alexandra, how exhausting was the rehearsal and taping those, because they were like giving their all. They were tough to watch because I don't like to see any abuse, and it was so mentally and physically abusive.
If you have the Coffin box set, watch because you see the take reel at the beginning of the episode.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
You'll see how many takes it took for that specific episode. And I think the first episode was maybe 3 takes. It may, I think. Again, I'm old, so forgive me. So if you have the Coffin, for anybody who has the Coffin box set, and I do, go watch the beginning of episodes. You'll see the take reel. Now, eventually, they quit doing the take reel altogether. Eventually, but they do the take reel for a long period of time. They do. They have slate in front of the camera, and there's always somebody holding it. In fact, during the episode, they have Alexandra holding it, and I think she's tied up. She's supposed to be tied up, bro. I think the audience was so worried about Victoria. They said, you know what? Let's have them show Alexandra holding the slate. Let them know everything's at least gonna be okay. And they got Alexandra holding the slate, smiling. And Oh, so she's tied up, she's gagged. It's like, God, that turned bad real fast.
And Jewel, before I forget, one more thing. We were talking about ghosts. Art Wallace writes in Shadows on the Wall. There's in the story, everybody's talking. The ghosts are just on the fringe. Like, did I hear something? I thought I saw something, and they're just right there, right on the edge. So you're right about that.
Yeah, I do think that because Dark Shadows always was about ghosts. And every like you have I've talked about this before where you don't see you might not see a character in an episode, but they mention that character, so they keep that character fresh in the audience's mind. Well, you can't physically always see ghosts on camera. That's expensive. So what's the best way to keep them alive in the audience? Oh, mention them, because it doesn't cost a lot to put a word on a script. It's a lot cheaper than the effect. And hey, if you can mention, oh, your house is haunted. Oh, you have ghosts in this house. That's easy dialogue. No, my house is not haunted. I have kids. So. Oh, have you ever visited a haunted house? That's my question for you. For you guys.
Susie?
I lived in a haunted house for 17 years.
Right.
Nice.
I mean, the thing about Collinwood is, well, just in the old house and in Collinwood, I mean, so many bad things happened there. You had just, the witchcraft that happened there, the murders that happened there, the suicides on Widow's Hill. And you have the supposed, Elizabeth killing her husband and his body is in the basement. Why wouldn't you think that the house is haunted? I mean, I would be scared to death just thinking like, my ex-husband is down there. Like, I would totally, hear things and be jumpy and be paranoid. And the same for the old house. So many horrible things happened there.
Yeah.
I've been to the Whaley House here in San Diego, which is supposed to be the most haunted house in America. And I wouldn't say that I've seen things, but maybe felt things. And there's certainly a lot of people who have taken photographs and a lot of documentation. That place is something else. It's the old town part of San Diego.
I'm gonna have to ask John if he's ever been to Alcatraz. He lives in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Oh, that prison, the God.
But I mean, sometimes it might not even feel like necessarily ghosts. Like you think, oh, this place is haunted, but you definitely, even if you don't believe in ghosts, you can definitely walk into a place,
the energy,
and not know anything about it, and and feel like a bad vibe.
Yep.
And then find out like, yeah, well, in fact, a lot of horrible things happened here. The energy could be off. I mean, I don't think I have any sort of gifts or anything, but there have been places that I've walked into and felt the energy just so bad where I never want to go back in there ever again. And I feel like if I would have walked into Collinwood, I might feel the same thing. I mean, I might be in awe of what it looked like, but I definitely feel, a little creeped out.
Yeah, for me, it would probably be the Bell Witch's Cave in Tennessee. That my great uncle, my late great uncle, he took us to the Bell Witch, the house where the family she haunted was, and he also took us to the caves. And I would not go in those caves. There was just something like, no, you know what, Uncle Bill, it's all you, buddy. You got the gun.
I remember when you did the podcast on that, and I had never heard of it. And I Googled it, and I was like, oh, hell no. I would not go anywhere near there.
Listen, in Tennessee, the older the people are down there, the more batshit crazy they are. No, and all fun. No, he's just like, look. He explained this to me once. He goes, either look, A, you either believe in ghosts, or B, you don't. And he goes, the thing of it is, he goes, sometimes not believing in something can cause something to happen to you. He goes, whether you believe in that or not. And he goes, and I do. And, he's a very down-to-earth man. And he told me that. And I said, okay. And then I started going to church regularly. I did. Elders find a way to scare the shit out of you. Really.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the older the people, like when you're around an old person, 99.9% of the time, I'm going to scare this kid. I'm going to scare the hell out of this kid. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm of Mexican descent, and I remember as a little kid, my grandmother with some other old ladies talking about there's a and you may know it, Susie, a term in Spanish of witches. And the Mexican culture is highly superstitious. And they were even talking about when they were little, and we're talking like after the turn of the century, these old ladies getting together talking about witches, and they would creep out the kids. And back then, that's before indoor plumbing in Santa Monica, Susie. And my grandmother made her brother go walk with her outside to the outhouse at night because she didn't want to go out there by herself. I mean, you're all spot on, Jewel, but you are just really spot on I totally agree with all of that, what you're saying tonight. And that's another example. It's true. These old people creep out the kids, and I don't think they're doing it intentionally. They're just telling how scared they are. And then it trickles down to the kids.
Yeah.
I could be off about this. Wasn't there El Chupacabra or something?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was kind of like a thing in I think the late 90s. Yeah.
Now, what about now? There was something out in like Mexico or something. They called it was about a really large shark.
Oh.
That I haven't heard.
Okay,
Yeah,
I could be wrong about the location, but there's a lot of good. Like, see, somebody asked, I've never been there, but somebody said, "Do you think Centralia PA is haunted?" I said, "I have no idea. Probably is, but you can't get. They have the road. They dirted off the road where you can't get back there now, because people were going there and putting graffiti on the wall. And don't listen, there are only 3 people who live in that town now. Three residents. There's no post office, there's no mail that gets delivered there. Because somebody was an idiot and didn't put out a fire properly, and it went down into a coal mine, and the fire is caught, and there's big cracks in the road and all that. And people died from it. And I do think there's situations where you're going to have a spirit haunt somewhere. Like there's just gonna. I went to Gettysburg. Now, I never heard or saw anything. They took us to Gettysburg on a field trip. I never heard or saw anything. We were there for 2 days. The first day, I didn't hear anything. We were there at night, and we heard this loud cannon go off. And I thought, somebody's fucking around. There was no one around.
Hold that. Keep talking, Joe. I want to grab something real quick. It has to do with Gettysburg.
Because you think, somebody's just messing around. Somebody's pulling a prank on you. And then it's like you hear this loud cannon fire, and it's like there's no cannon around. There's nobody around. And it's just like, yeah. I think it's time to go home. It's time to go home. Home's nice.
I wanted to point out something. I read this book in my ventures into Maine, and there were a lot. You ever heard of the 16th Maine Regiment at Gettysburg? It really kind of helped the Union win that victory. So long story short, in this novel, it's about these guys and the aftermath of Gettysburg and all these guys. And Deer Isle is in Hancock County, where my ancestors are from. Anyway, really long story, very short. One of the protagonists are going down the Blue Hill Peninsula to Deer Isle, and she's with this old guy and was talking about after the war or after Gettysburg or towards the end of the war, people would see the ghosts of the men coming back to where they lived. And that story, I'm going to Maine in a couple months. I'm going to get to the bottom of that story. But I just got chills about this. So I think you're right, Joel. I think when you have some horrible thing that happened or something that happened real quick where people died, I think that the spirits get confused and they're trying to they don't know where to go or what to do. And I totally get it with Gettysburg. I agree.
Yeah.
You can't have that kind of absolute carnage and don't think that, oh, you're going to go there and nothing's going to happen.
There's two places I visit. There's Gettysburg and Fort Necessity. Fort Necessity is not haunted. I've been there like 4 times in my life in PA. It's not haunted. No offense to anybody who says it is, but it's not haunted. And here's the thing: people have been to Gettysburg more than me who will tell you it's not haunted. I believe them. It's just I heard something different than what you didn't. That's all. That's all. I'm not crazy. Ask my wife. You know. Good. Is there anything you guys want to add about any of this, or
well, you know, when you talk about the paranoia thing and how, you know, you guys brought up when the older people, how, you know, they scare you and whatnot. I think that a lot of that paranoia, even though Elizabeth and Roger, you know, and David had reasons to be paranoid, I think that maybe their parents, like, they inherited some of that from their ancestors. But then again, Carolyn was such a free spirit. She didn't seem to be paranoid really about much of anything. But yeah, maybe since Elizabeth was the older sister, maybe she, I don't know, influenced Roger a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
I got some fun advice for you, Susie. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. One time, this was like a year after me and Julie were married. I was outside walking the dog, and the dog went in the house. I let the dog go in the house first. I decided to walk around the house. As my wife said, she heard something. I said, okay, I'll go check it. You know, listen, I live in the middle of nowhere. Okay. She said she heard something. So I said, I'm 6'4". I don't give a shit. What's going to hurt me? At least that's what my motto. So I'm walking around. I heard a blood-curdling scream from my house.
Oh, hell.
I run into the goddamn house, close the door, said, what the hell's wrong? She goes, she kissed me on the cheek. My hero. Nothing. I just want to see how fast you'd come in here. She goes, there's a tip. That she smacks me on the ass. She goes, get in bed, honey. There's a tip for you to do to your husband.
Oh my God.
My Julie Sains is evil. No, I'm kidding. She's not evil, but she'll mess with me. Like, I said, don't you ever do that. She goes,
my
I said, because
God.
I was going to come. I said, because I came in with my fist raised. I don't know, like, if somebody's in here hurting, let me fucking beat the hell out of them.
Oh my God. I don't know if I could ever do that to my husband.
I give sound advice. No.
Oh man.
I just wanted to I just wanted to say thank you for well, one thing I want to say about Roger is there is an episode where he started copping up, I think it was during the Phoenix arc, about where he noticed hearing sounds, and his his facade is a front for fear.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good. But I really wanted, thank you, Jewel, so much for letting us talk about that episode, The House on the Web, and talking about Art Wallace and talking about Shadows on the Wall, and even talking about Gettysburg tonight. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to talking about this since Susie and I were talking a month ago. So I really appreciate the forum.
There are some things I do want to cover with you both. I'd love to cover the werewolf arc in Dark Shadows with you both. Discuss the werewolf stuff. And I'd love to, obviously, Halloween 6, you both know that. But two movies I think you will both enjoy, and they're both animated: Vampire Hunter D and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Just a suggestion.
I've never even heard of those.
Well, I haven't either, but I'm open-minded to. Susie and I will check them out. We watch them at the same time, and then we get on the phone. Oh, what do you think? Oh. So yeah, we have long-term homework assignments.
Obviously, part 2 is a lot better than the first one. It's what happens when a Japanese studio and an American studio work really, really well together. So, very, very good character. And I'd like to thank Magda for not crossing over Ghost in the Shell and Vampire Hunter D, because that would have been a huge, huge catastrophe. Thank you, studio. Thank you. No, it would no. I'll give you this tangent. Ghost in the Shell is set in the future. Now, so is Vampire Hunter D. So I'll play that spoiler for you. Vampire Hunter D travels around slaying vampires, obviously, while being one himself. And here's Ghost in the Shell, these people who have cyber brains and they could dive in the internet just using their mind. They don't have natural bodies. They have prosthetic cyber bodies and stuff. And they work for the government. There was a suggestion after Ghost in the Shell, the second season, there should be a crossover between Vampire Hunter D and the Ghost in the Shell. Here's the problem with that. There's two real big. Number one, the Section 9 crew in Ghost in the Shell, they travel all over the world to fight cyber terrorism. They would have ran into him by now. Number two, no, they would have. Listen, D gets around better than any time traveler or a person that does travel that I've ever seen. And the man rides a horse, a metal horse. Number two, there are no vampires and Ghost in the Shell. Okay, go ahead. There you go. There's my why it wouldn't have worked. But anyway,
oh gosh,
it wouldn't have worked. It would have flopped. It would have flopped harder than a fish on land. That's saying something. That is. Is there anything you guys want to add before you go?
No.
No, just this was a lot of fun. I was glad that we were able to talk about this. And Dawn, thank you for sharing the YouTube video of the web.
I have a great movie recommendation too before you go, because I have to upload 2 videos tonight. This one and the movie me Gordon and Butch just reviewed. It's from 1972. It's on Tubi. Stars Charles Bronson. It's called The Mechanic.
Okay.
It is one of Bronson's most underrated films.
He's a good actor. Yeah.
I will ask this. Did Charles Bronson's character really swallow poison? I'll leave that with you.
Okay.
Go check out some movies. And we'll get back. Definitely want to do some stuff with you guys. Let me know when you either want to discuss the werewolf stuff. We could talk about it at any time. Hit me up on. Please hit me up on Facebook, because my Twitter has not been active.
Oh, okay.
I've been getting kicked in and out of Twitter bad. I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I don't have Facebook, but I have Instagram. I have you on Instagram.
Yes, Please hit me up on one of
Okay.
those.
Okay.
Because Twitter's being.
Yeah, it's gotten weird, technically a little weird lately. Yeah.
I'm sorry, X.
X. Oh, excuse me.
If
X.
that's the reason I'm getting kicked off, you know what? You can all go to hell. Susie, enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
Try to scare your husband. Or not. Yeah. Listen, John Carpenter's Halloween isn't wrong. Everybody's entitled to one good scare.
That's true. And I think I told you on one of your videos, I'm sorry that I know that you probably have to go. I think you and Patrick were discussing, I think you guys were discussing Psycho. I don't know, but you were discussing one of those movies, and it was like during Halloween, and you had a Halloween decoration behind you. It was hanging, and all of a sudden, I don't know, somebody came by, and the decoration kind of went like this, and I'm not even kidding you. I screamed because I thought there was somebody behind you, and I'm like, oh my god.
You know who puts the decorations up around here? My wife. And she always hangs something. If you can see that,
yes, it was hanging.
There. Yeah, she always hangs something up there, and she goes, you know why I put stuff up there? I said, no. She goes, I hope I'm trying to get something to fall on you without noticing, so it scares you.
Oh no!
And I told my wife, I said, you didn't scare me, but you scared Susie.
Yes, you're scaring your audience. Yes, I screamed. I was like, oh my god. My husband's like, what happened?
She's like, but it was meant for you.
Oh.
She only worries about scaring one person, and it's me. And it's like, listen, unless you're going to do that blood curdling scream thing again, I said that's about it. I said, because the only thing I worry about is you and the kids. I said, listen, I said I have to hurt somebody if somebody here tries to hurt you guys. So.
Yes.
Women, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. First of all, before we go, Dawn, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
It was.
To discuss Shadows on the Wall and the web and sort of do the comparison and what the separation was. It was a lot of fun. Susie, thank you so much always for coming on here. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. This was a lot of fun. Sorry for the late start.
That's okay.
I knew we had one. I'm thinking, I wonder what time they wanted to start. As I'm recording the mechanic with Bush and Gordon, thinking, I wonder what time I should start with Susie and Dawn. I'm thinking, and then as I'm eating, I'm thinking, oh, that's right. I could start right away. What am I doing? I don't have to upload this right now.
It's okay.
The host of this channel, I got to tell you. No. Susie, enjoy the rest of your vacation. Dawn, God bless both of you. Take care. Have a safe weekend.
You too. Thanks, Jewel. Bye-bye.